Hello and welcome to the Fundraising Nest Maven time. I don't think this our Maven here needs any introduction. We have the fabulous Fee McPhee with us today in the studio. Fee, how are you?
I'm very well, Michelle. How are you doing?
I am good, and like I said, you don't need much of an introduction across Australia or New Zealand, probably the whole world. But I do know that you have a very coveted kind of title at the moment. You are one of the only people to currently be a fellow of both FINS and FIA, which
Yeah.
is very cool. And I think that is a very respectful and deserved recognition of your mahi in both Australia and New Zealand over all these years.
Thank
So
you.
you do so much stuff for so many different people. It would be really cool. Why don't you tell us what you're doing right now and who you're doing it with, and yeah, let our community know what you're up to.
Awesome. Well, two main things at the moment. The one that I am deep into on my screen over here, I should have turned it off so the charts aren't staring me in the face, is with the benchmarking project. So we kicked off the benchmarking project 2 years ago. Myself and Dr. Peter Coleman, Paul Tabachis, and Adam Watson from Fundraising Partners. We wanted to see if we could bring a benchmarking program to Australia and New Zealand, looking at individual giving. That was kind of for the members. So, what do people want to look at? What do people want to know? And how can we bring people together to discuss the really important trends and KPIs and metrics that are happening in individual giving? So, we kicked that off, and this year we have 43 Australian charities and 8 New Zealand charities
Very
participating.
cool.
We have a membership base, though, of several hundred organisations and several hundred watchers as well. So the idea with the program is, yes, we analyse what's happening, benchmark individual giving, but also bring people together to discuss what do you actually do with that information, how do we improve within our organisation. So we have some really cool forums throughout the year that people come along to. And the thing that has really inspired me from this is being able to have, and I think this is one of the sort of, underlying values of the fundraising nest, being able to have conversations,
Yeah.
being able to actually talk about things that are affecting us and how we're tackling them, because there's no one size fits all in fundraising.
Yep.
And I know there's a risk with something like benchmarking that people might look at it and go, oh, well, we just should do that and not that and that.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is bring the stories. Everyone's got a story there. So we're
That's cool.
just launching the New Zealand report at the moment. We did Australia a few weeks ago. That's been super exciting.
Yeah.
And then the other one is with Revolutionise. So my business partner, Alan Clayton, who many of you might know, one of your country compatriots there.
Yeah.
So
Didn't quite get up to his pub when I was in Scotland recently. It did cross my mind, but I thought I can't take my dad to meet Al. That might be a disaster.
up at the inch, up at the inch there at Loch Ness. So we are an organisation. Revolutionise is an organisation. We've got staff around the world. It's senior consultants, so we only work kind of with a few clients at a time. And we're about accelerating, helping organisations accelerate with purpose.
Yeah.
And so that a lot of that is around inspiration, education, and then designing how people might do that. One of the things that I've learned in my career is culture absolutely eats strategy for breakfast. Yeah. If the culture's not right and it's not supporting fundraising, it is really hard to accelerate. So a lot of our work is research evidence-based, looking at organisations that are really great at fundraising and what can other organisations learn about behaviours and cultures that can support that better. And then one of my, my bent with that is then what's the strategy that works behind that. Another pillar of the team works on that kind of creative side. We're not an agency. We actually work with organisations to help them build their internal approach to basically coming up with briefs for campaigns, products, etc. And we use a behavioural design kind of sprint methodology there. Been really interesting. Some organisations are just simply so far away from being able to get together and work together to do this, whereas others have really risen to the challenge and they've changed their internal culture to do it.
And a lot of that is about looking after the fundraiser as well, isn't it? It's not just about the strategy. I know Alan's done quite a lot of work on, and it's a topic everyone's talking about, the retention of fundraisers, and it's something I talk about a lot. Even as a donor myself, I don't mind funding education. But what I think the recruitment costs in organisations aren't just about the direct costs of constantly recruiting, but the historic knowledge that is lost. How can you have a successful request programme with staff that haven't been there for very long, you know?
We can see this in benchmarking. It's really fascinating. Going back, I actually presented to an organisation the other day who was one of my first clients 15, 16 years ago. At points, I knew more about how they'd got to where they were than the team in place, just because I was able to look at the data and say, oh, I remember what that was and what happened then. And it was really interesting to see how they turned on and off certain things based on the different teams that had come in. So instead of the strategy leading and the long-term view of that strategy leading, it was, in some cases, I think we come in personal preference. What am I good at? In some cases, our boards are saying, actually, we don't like that and we want to do something different. So it's been really interesting to see how some organisations have been less strategy driven and more personality driven, and that has been successful for some and not for others. But on the retaining fundraisers, just for anyone out there, we commissioned some work from research from Adrian Sargent. It's called What Makes Fundraisers Tick. It's available free on our website, which is revolutionize.com. Anyone who works in fundraising needs to get that in front of their boss, who needs to get that in front of their boss. It really, really is quite...
I think if you jump into the research part, we shared that document in the research section collection of the hub. So absolutely, we come both to the hub web. The other thing, so just going back to the benchmarking project for anyone listening, how do they become part of that? Is that through, you know, it's hard for fundraisers, they know all this cool stuff. How can they... how do they convince their leadership, or is it easy to become part of the benchmarking project?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things you do. One you can just jump on and follow. So check us out on LinkedIn or go to our website, which is benchmarkingproject.org, and you can sign up there. Organisations, so any organisation can join, and we only kind of analyse the data of about 50 charities a year, and so that's usually larger size ones. So anyone who doesn't qualify for that can actually join as what we call an accelerator member. So they get to come along to the forums, they get to see the reporting, the de-identified part of the reporting. I mean, it can be individuals, organisations, or even consultants and suppliers. So we have a really amazing group of suppliers who are part of the program as well. They've been really cool at sharing into the membership and answering questions. But just jump online and there's a little form on the website there. So we just want people to join the conversation, and then if you need or can qualify for the analysis, absolutely in there. We also we kind of look at it as an ecosystem too. So we have more strategic profitability benchmarking is aligned with that. We're looking at what we can do in the community peer-to-peer events benchmarking space, digital also. It's not going to all be us. So we're looking
collaboration.
Absolutely. It's just collaboration to share that information there.
Sounds very exciting. So without giving away too much, we want people to get in and be part of this. What excites you about what you are discovering? What excites you about the future of the next few years in the space you're working in?
It's really been cool to see, but particularly in the data here, organisations coming new to fundraising or new to individual giving and being able to grow rapidly because they were able to learn from what people have been doing before and how our sector shares. So you can actually come and start a brand new individual giving program, and there's several of those organisations in the analysis this year who have just grown rapidly, and they've got great retention and great gifts coming in and strong donors and strong programs because they're able to learn from what others have done before them. And then also seeing some of our organisations that have been at this for a really, really long time, it becomes more challenging. The bigger you are, the harder it is to grow. But they're then having to try, test, disrupt, find new ways of doing things and help their organisations understand what's changing about the market and donors. So it's been really super fun to learn from those organisations as well.
It's brilliant. Innovation, I think when you're a small organisation and you can't innovate and maybe you think, oh, we're behind, but actually innovation by anyone is good for everyone because it creates these new pathways. It creates new systems, and so innovation for anyone is beneficial. Yeah,
and it doesn't have to be a new thing.
Yeah.
It's quite often there's the kind of and I get it. I work with boards a lot, and you can kind of they're saying, "What's the next new thing?" And no one wants to be the first; they always want to be the second. But what's the next new thing? And for me, innovation is more about making sure at first, is there anything you can innovate within your programs currently now,
Yeah.
and walking through the benchmarking with the charities. So each charity gets a session. We go through what's sort of happening in their program. It's really fascinating to hear. Even the very best are finding ways to innovate within their own programs to improve. So I'm really enjoying that part of it, and helping people understand that growth and development isn't just about more.
Yeah. Yeah, quality as well, isn't it? But
Yeah,
the quality.
absolutely.
So on the flip side, that excites you, and your passion is obvious. I don't want to say, what makes you fear? Is there anything that kind of makes you fearful about the future?
Um, yes, look, there has been, particularly with the pandemic, so the disruption with the pandemic really disrupted fundraising in Australia a lot more than New Zealand. That's been a really interesting to see the difference. So our experience in New Zealand with the pandemic and lockdowns and disruption to certain activities was quite different to what we saw in Australia. But what we had here was checks ripped out of our system in a very short time frame. I'm
You
very
did
thankful for the Australian charities who now have until 2030 to work through that. Think of your New Zealand friends who had, what do we have,
9 months.
just hardly any time. So both of those things have really disrupted, and organisations have seen declines and shifts in their programs. The short-term knee-jerk reactions I'm seeing from some organisations at the top level is really concerning. Seeing some organisations revert to the idea that fundraising is a cost, not an investment. So there's a little bit of that. And then you can see the amazing organisations that have strong leadership that understands fundraising and the business of fundraising, who are flying. And they're sticking with it, and they're investing, or they're understanding that what they're doing is investing. Others are retreating. One of
Got a
the
long-term vision there. I always thought business plans should be at least minimum 3 years. But I guess it's that kind of with the turnover. Yet for those in leadership, they want their time to be successful, and it's for those that are the
first 100 days of a new CEO, they're always looking for what we can change to improve. Everything's in 12-month budgets. Most boards are looking at lag indicators, not lead indicators. For me, the return on acquisition, it's in Australia now, it's a minimum of 3 years, and that's the reality, and we need to set those expectations. So if you're not forecasting past 3 years, you're not actually looking at the potential in our programs there. So enjoying the opportunity to help combat those views with education. We're seeing education is the main way that we can help, and helping fundraisers and fundraising teams establish themselves as professionals within their organisations, equal to their program side, so that people can understand the business of fundraising as opposed to
invest in
fundraising.
the knowledge, the knowledge people.
Over here.
Yeah, the keepers of the knowledge are mavens, like yourself. They haven't got the knowledge that they have through just going to a conference once a year. And I think that's what I think a lot of the kind of younger generation of fundraisers, they know that they need to learn, but they're so busy, and they're like, they don't have time to learn. One of the things we want to introduce through the fundraising nest is Freedom Friday, and it was from my husband and the kids' school. But my husband's a programmer, and on a Friday is R&D time. They don't have to tag their work to anything. They've got their researching and developing. And so Freedom Friday, we want to empower, get this campaign going, even if it's for 2 hours on a Friday afternoon. All fundraisers in my head are allowed 2 hours R&D time. They research and develop. And then I think they'll be like, okay, what do I do? So we want to gather all our mavens and everyone that's doing work in the sector and find a place to put, here's the top 50 research papers. Start here, read those,
I love that.
And so, I think it's super important that fundraisers are given the time during the week to learn the stuff that they need to learn.
Learning culture, kind of a quite seminal piece of research that we revolutionised. Engaged Adrian Sargent to do, over a decade now, though, was looking at what the behaviours of great fundraising organisations were, ones that had grown and sustained their growth. And learning culture was one of them. supporting the learning culture from the top down and not seeing learning as a cost. Again, you look at training budgets within nonprofits across the board, not just for fundraisers. They're really, really rubbish. But the organisations who are investing and see learning as a critical piece of their culture are the ones that really, really excel. And that's things like, how do we train the rest of the organisation to understand fundraising? How does the rest of the organisation help train us to better understand what they're doing? How do we give fundraisers the freedom to look beyond just what they're doing right now and what's in the 12-month budget? So I'm super excited for this. We used to have Friday bag at Pareto. So that was 2 hours, and we all had to bring in just a piece of, it could be fundraising, marketing, something that had inspired us. It all went in a bag, a very random looking bag, and something got pulled out and we discussed it.
That's very cool.
Really, really good. I mean, we needed the cheese and the wine to get everyone but once everyone kind of saw the benefit and being able to be set free in a work environment with your colleagues and talk and not be pressured by, have you answered that email?
Absolutely. And also I think the next step is, you can't just give them training time. You have to let them implement what they've learned. And if that means taking a risk on something you've not done before, then that's part of this whole ecosystem that you're talking about. The letting them, trusting them, and giving them the autonomy to implement what they are learning.
Yeah, so exciting. I've presented at a couple of internal conferences, you might call them. So I'm really stoked for organisations now that are saying, actually, this is so important. We'll organise our own internal training here. And some of the ways people are doing that is really creative, getting multifunctional teams together to tackle a problem or an idea. So they might set up some information that they can consume first, and then they go away as a team and come back and just talk about these ideas. The little bit like Shark Tank 2. So the R&D budget gets put to the thing that gets the most support internally. So cool, really cool. And accepting that learning includes failure. I think this is my biggest learning in the last couple of years is if you're going to try something new, you need to expect to fail because that's where you learn. Certainty culture is ruining fundraising in some organisations. And that's why our fundraisers leave in some cases, I think.
It makes it very exciting. So let's move away from fundraising and let's look at Fee McPhee. Who is Fee McPhee outside fundraising? Tell us something about yourself that we don't know.
Ooh, what's something you don't know about me? I am one of my passions is music, but I can't play, I can't read, I can barely sing, but I love to dance. And so I spend a lot of time following music around and finding that joy. And my other joy that I've recently discovered, which I swore I was never going to be one of these people, but I like going on hikes that take like 7 hours. There is something quite incredible about being able to go out into the mountains far, far away and know that nobody can get you. Nobody can get hold of you. Nobody can ask you questions. And your job is just to look at the beautiful nature around you. So I've been really enjoying that. And I think that will shock some people if you know me well.
No, that sounds, I 7-hour hike's a bit far for me. Did it when I was younger.
There's lots of little rests. There's snacks. It's all good. It's not walking for 7 hours nonstop.
And tell me, do you have an earliest fundraising memory in your life?
Ooh,
my one was dispersed the other day. Live Aid for me when I was little was this huge thing, and all the kids in the council estates decided that they were going to fundraise for Live Aid. And it was a really big fundraising memory for me. We went round and did entertainment in the flats and all sorts of things. Wow. And then I mentioned to you just before we went live that I met Sir Bob Geldof last week. And I was like, full circle. So that was a very special moment for me in my connection to fundraising, was meeting him. So yeah, Live Aid was my...
I'm super jealous. I'm very jealous. Look, my earliest kind of fundraising experience was at high school. I actually can't remember my childhood in detail. I might ask my brother. He always remembers all the details. But in high school, there was just this on Fridays, one Friday each month, there was you had to put coins in a bowl, and we were collecting. And this went on for probably about 12 months before I went, and my mum asked, why am I stealing coins from her purse? I said, well, you just have to put money in this bowl. I don't know what it's for. She's like, could you go off and find out? This seems ridiculous. So I did, and I went up and asked one of the girls what it was all about. And I was genuinely blown away to find out that there was a group within the school who are working together to identify what problems might be happening in our local community and how we could help as a school. One of them was donating, but the message was never getting across to anyone. We were all just dutifully putting coins and stealing money from our parents with really no idea. And so what did, and I wasn't because of me, but what happened after that was the stories. So they started telling stories about why we were asking for money each month in there. And for me, that was my first kind of experience with actually head over heart. I didn't know anything about that at the time, but things that made me feel something. And a lot of the time it made me feel uncomfortable. And giving that money made me feel more comfortable. And I just look back on it now and I'm like, that is the basis of fundraising. Things that make us feel uncomfortable, problems in the world, and we want to feel better, and humans want to feel better. And that's what we're doing with organisations, is finding the solutions and helping people feel better.
I think it was 2007, there was one of the largest, it was a study done, it was a Dutch study done in 2007. It was quite a big global study, and 85, when people were asked why they gave to charity, 85% of people said because they were asked.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, it's as simple as that, isn't it? Because I was asked.
Absolutely.
Humans are good people.
There's this kind of I've been asked a few times, why do we need to do this fundraising? Why do we need to ask? Can't we just inspire people to give? And I think, the reality is human nature. We really don't do anything unless we're asked. There's not a lot of us who get out there just looking for ways to help.
Absolutely. It's so and it's very basic. It's because I was asked, and if you're asked, well, you'll give even more. So but the very simple thing is because you were asked. Fee, we're about coming to our time. The last question I'll ask all of our mavens is, what advice would you give to your younger self that you wish you knew then that you know now?
Ask more questions. I am an incredibly impulsive person. I've known Michelle for quite a while. We have some similarities in that. I am very impulsive, and most of the time that's okay. But I realise, looking back, and I'm much better now at just ask more questions. Just get a little bit more information. And that's one of the things I love about working with data, to be honest, is it gives you more and more information to be more and more informed. But just for everything in my life, just asking you a few more questions. Forewarned.
Keep that quest for knowledge alive.
Yeah. There is an element, though. I know why some people are friends with me, is it's because I'll be the one who says yes first. So there's a little bit of a balance there.
I feel asked. Go on. You can ask me. I don't want to. But that's awesome. Fee, as always, it's been wonderful. Do check out the benchmarking project and Revolutionize. And Fee is one of our mavens, and no doubt, hopefully she'll pop into the community hub and say hello when she's got a minute. Fee, it's been wonderful having you. Thank you so much, and have a great weekend. Ka kite.
Thanks for having me, Michelle.
Bye.